Welcome to A Date with Darkness podcast, where I will be discussing the impact of hurtful and abusive relationships and how to overcome them so that you can move through your pain and get to the kind of healthy relationships you want, need, and deserve. I'm Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed psychotherapist based in California. While I hope that you find this podcast educational and informational, please note it should not be substituted for treatment with a licensed mental health professional. Also, due to the nature of the podcast, some of the information presented on the show can be sensitive to some of my listeners, so please note that listener discretion is advised. Hello and welcome back to the show. It's been a minute since I've recorded an episode, and I have to say I'm so happy to be back here recording with you guys and doing a show for you guys, I should say. It's springtime, the weather's nice, I love it. How are you guys doing? And what have you guys been up to since the last episode? I have a very special episode with a very special guest in store for today. But of course, I'm biased, as always. I think all of the shows are great. I love them all. I love all the guests. And I have a really good time doing this show for you guys. It's so special. And each and every one of my listeners are also very special as well. So I wanted to of course, do the administrative stuff before we dive in. The administrative stuff is, of course, the membership coaching is becoming available. My apologies for that. Had a number of projects earlier this year, which pushed back the release date of the membership coaching site. So that will be live for you soon, and we will drop that link so that you can get on the waiting list. I think I'm going to drop an email about the site so that you guys can maybe get kind of like a backdoor sneak preview, a look at it. And my assistant and I have been working very hard on getting that out, making it pretty, putting all the bells and whistles on it for you. So I'm very excited about that coaching program to launch this year. I think it's going to be great. And I'm just excited to share new projects that are up and coming with you guys. You have any questions, comments, or concerns for me, please email me at adateWithDarkness@gmail.com. You can also visit my website, drnataliejones.com, to get on the mailing list and subscribe to the newsletter, as well as visit blogs and be kept up to breast about things that are up and coming with the practice or consulting aspect. So before I forget to mention, of course, the Facebook group is there for you if you're looking for support. So free support from people who are also in the recovery stages of healing from abuse, such as yourself, or looking to get over hurt and pain and just looking for some support, because there's a fair number of you that have been through relationships that are unhealthy, relationships that are dysfunctional, or relationships that have left you feeling abandoned, rejected, neglected, all of the things. So of course, A Date with Darkness Facebook group is there for that. So happy to have you over. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into today's show. I did today's show, which is my guest today is Dalila, and she and I talk about attachment, specifically anxious and avoidant attachment in relationships. And I decided to do this show today, and it's something that I've been thinking about for a while. People get avoidant attachment and narcissism confused, and they are not one and the same. They are very different. An avoidant attachment and a person who is narcissistic or has narcissistic traits are two totally different things. However, some of the manifestations or some of the behaviors can definitely come across as being the same. And so she and I get into specifically just anxious avoidant and avoidant attachment, and how that shows up in intimate relationships. That push-pull dynamic, an anxious person really wants to be in a relationship and really needs to be affirmed. And an avoidant person, although they have the desire to be in a relationship and very much want to be loved, their instant go-to is to flee, is to get out of the relationship when they start catching feelings. So they're going to push the anxious person away, and they're not going to like how they feel. And they're going to go into retreat mode and they're going to create distance. And Dalila and I get into just specifically the anxious attachment and the avoidant attachment in the relationship. I'm probably going to do a later podcast in where I talk a little bit more in depth about the anxious attachment and the avoidant attachment styles separately, just so that you guys can get a clearer picture of what's happening there and see if any of that resonates with you. And so without further ado, here's Dalila and I. Hello and welcome to the show, Dalila. How are you?
Oh, I'm well. Thank you so much. It's my honor to be invited by you.
Yes, I've been wanting to do this show for a while as we discuss. So, Dalila, for my listeners who are not familiar with you, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and the passion behind your work?
Where should I start? So there is a short story and there is a long story, but let me just start with basics. I'm a marriage and family therapist licensed in the state of California. And I'm also a relationship coach for high achieving women who are looking for love and struggling to find a good partner on today's dating scene. So I use my knowledge of attachment theory and all my clinical experience to help women manage their emotions, who are mostly, we call it anxiously attached. They're like anxious love seekers and who are struggling to find a person who is not avoidant. Usually that means emotionally unavailable man. And that's kind of that's my main kind of what I love doing the most. I do other things as well, but that's kind of it in a nutshell. If you have any further questions.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I invited you, because our work is actually very closely aligned. I also work with a similar demographic of women who struggle with that, as well as narcissistic abuse. So I think this is exciting for a number of reasons. And I think a lot of times, I'm glad you led the segue into that. A lot of times high achieving women get avoidant men or emotionally unavailable men confused with men that are narcissistic, right? And that people think that the two are one and the same, and they actually are not. And so a lot of times I end up getting women like the ones that you've mentioned that are anxiously attached, and they get men who are avoidant. So before we get into exactly what that is, can you talk a little bit about what made you passionate about working with women, high achieving women who struggle with this?
Well, I can't escape talking about myself. And a part of my work is actually addressing, in pop psychology, we call it inner child, but I call it based on what I learned from other authors is like parts work. We do parts work because it's not only one inner child. There are so many parts of us that been hurt. And all my life, I felt like, do I even belong in this family? You know, as a child, I was feeling like I couldn't kind of pinpoint, that they don't love me. Why don't but I just didn't feel that belonging and love. And I didn't even know why. Like my parents were like, why is she like this? They couldn't understand what happened. And just, in all my life, I wanted to study psychology to figure not necessarily this out, but this was kind of my passion, I guess.
The driving force.
Yeah, driving force. And I was reading my parents' books on the shelf, like about psychology, about how to raise children, about also abnormal psychology, people in institutions. That was so interesting to me. But the love was kind of this guiding force for me. There was this like sense, like I just feeling unfulfilled. Obviously, it goes to tell you that I'm one of these women who anxious love seekers, right?
Of course.
Good news is, everybody, you can overcome it, and I don't mean overcome it. You can acquire secure attachment, which is great news.
Right? That is great news for the
Yes.
anxious folks out there, right? And it certainly, again, your story very much resonates with me. How old were you when you started feeling that way, like you were different, or why don't they love me? Can you recall maybe, how old you were?
I mean, since I kind of have memory, I felt kind of unloved. Like I created a story that they adopted me, and then all of a sudden they had my brother. But this story didn't make sense because, with my conscious brain, with my prefrontal cortex, I knew that I look like them so much. I'm like off them, right?
Okay.
But then later I learned, just kind of casual conversation with my dad, right? Like, oh, we had to give you to you, grandma, when you were 1, because father had to go to a mandated military in my country, former Yugoslavia. So he had to go to military. I was 1 year old. Mom didn't have income. Father didn't get income from military. This is just kind of service. And mother had to find work. And all of a sudden, they just disappeared from my life. There was a big wound that they just it was kind of normal, but we gave you to grandma, right? Like, and grandma is the most loving. I was lucky to actually have my grandma. I love her so much. I have this deep attachment with her.
Wow.
And then after a few months, I had to go back to them. So like I had to leave grandma. So I don't remember these details, but now as a professional, I could see where that wound came from. Besides the fact that parents make mistakes, other various mistakes with children.
Sure.
So this was that deep wound, feeling I don't belong here. What there was this cut of that attachment, between my parents, and they just couldn't. They did their best, but.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Now, you mentioned that you're originally from Yugoslavia, or
Yes,
your
formerly
parents are from okay.
Yeah.
I want to ask you this as it relates to the attachment style. I'm wondering for you, how much of the attachment style that you've experienced do you feel like is culturally related? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Like, is this something that's common in people that are from Yugoslavia? Is this, like, in terms of the attachment, and I want to make it sound as politically correct as I can, but I also want to ask, like, how much of it do you think is culturally related?
I mean, which part of it do you think that I had anxious attachment, or that's okay in my culture?
Correct.
Or
That it's okay.
There's so many aspects of this.
Yes.
Of like it's interesting, like, because the way I showed up to my parents was more like avoidant, like, hey, when I was a teenager, right? I don't want to be close to you, right? So it's hard for me to answer, but what I know from reading about it, that women present more as anxiously attached, and there are a little bit more men that are avoidantly attached. and that they obviously attract each other. All my previous relationships were avoidant men
Yeah.
that are, that I'm attracted to, and that were attracted to me.
Yes.
So that's how it works. And I believe there is some cultural messaging, and I don't think it's specific to Yugoslavians.
Okay.
Or
So for those folks that are listening, what does anxious attachment look like in an adult?
what does anxious attachment look in an adult? So talking about our audience, high achieving women.
Yes.
And the branding for me is like independent women role. That's where I'm on Instagram, and that kind of sounds very counterintuitive, right? They're independent women. People usually conflate it with low functioning kind of, but it's really not. Anxious attachment for high achieving women. There are so many women who are successful, who are overachievers, who can manage everything in their life, money wise, and have their own place and everything that you can imagine being successful business people, lawyers, doctors, therapists. I have many therapists who are my clients.
Yes.
But when it comes to relationships, that's when things kind of become triggered mostly. There are other aspects that you can have some at work. So usually what I notice, it's like over functioning, overthinking, being perfectionist. And in terms of relationships, it's kind of you become, okay, I need to make this work. Instead of when women start seeing somebody at the beginning, they're so happy because they're not attached yet. He's courting them, the guys are courting them and they're enjoying. And as soon as they start attaching, that's when that trauma gets triggered. That's when they kind of, and usually people describe it, and I hate this term. They say feeling needy, feeling clingy. But we are not needy or clingy. We can manage. We are heavy. We are very, what's the word? Proud people as well. We are not, we don't crave somebody, oh, just love me and I'm gonna be okay. No, we want real love. We actually want to know that this person can appreciate everything that we have to offer. And this is what gets lost when this trauma gets triggered. These women lose this vision of who they are, and they kind of go into wondering, why is he not calling me? Should I call him or not? Should I text him or not? And then talking to friends over the phone for hours,
analyzing everything.
Did I say something wrong? Was my hair not good enough? Like I'm just trivializing a little bit.
Tearing themselves apart.
Yeah. And that's what happens. And then when you come across like this, and then you go in front of somebody who is potentially slightly avoidant, and he may be a good man, there are different kinds of avoidance, people for this purpose, I say people who are constantly dating and who are serial daters, rather than people who are maybe a little bit scared, of intimacy, but who crave it as well and who want to make it work, who are somewhat evolved, because we all need to be evolved to actually be ready. But deep down, I put this question to every anxious love seeker. Are you really ready for that intimacy that you want and crave?
Ooh, why that question? What makes you ask that?
Well, when we look deep down, that fear that drives us to choose unavailable people, and ultimately we are afraid to show up because there is shame about who we are, whether due to some kind of abuse, in the past, there is a shame about myself. So if I show myself the way I am, am I gonna be loved? Am I gonna be accepted? Can I show up? So that's kind of related to that self-appreciation, self-love. It all goes back to that. I hate, not that I hate to say, I love to say that, but it's kind of almost cliche. Like you have to start with yourself, to accept yourself and love yourself so that you know who you are.
Okay.
And what you have to offer. And it's just like, say, this is another trivial example, which I like to use very illustratively. Is like, say you're a car salesman, and if you sell Toyotas, you're going to sell it to many people. But if you're selling a Ferrari, right, you kind of don't want to try to market it to everybody, right? There is a very specific segment of people that you want. So you kind of need to know who you are and how to appreciate yourself and know that you are actually looking for that person who will know how to appreciate you.
And will buy your Ferrari.
Yes. I don't like that example for that very reason.
No, but I get it. I get it. It means that, how I interpret what you're saying is that you are not for everyone and everyone is not for you. So when you get very secure with yourself and you love yourself and you know your worth, you are going to start attracting people that also know your worth. You're not going to be attracting people that are confused, that know your worth for 5 minutes and then they're out the door. No, you start to attract people that are very much in alignment with that. I get it.
Yeah, and for that very reason, I'll go back to that. Are you ready for that? And part of you might be afraid, are you going to be heartbroken? That's why you may not be ready, because like, I know I kind of want to latch onto this person, to make this relationship work, because I'm like kind of high achiever, that part of us. I kind of want to make this work. I want to be successful, that drives us too. That's kind of crazy. That's how society makes us work through school. Or what's the next? I want to meet this deadline. I want to finish grade 1. I want to finish college. And now I want to make this relationship work. You become this kind of goal-oriented achiever. That's like that part with high functioning women. Instead of kind of sitting back and discerning, I call it discerning because it's kind of making decision mindfully at every moment of your life. How does this person make me feel? Is he right for me? And then take your time so that you can actually be ready, so that you can feel I can be excited with this person as well as safe.
Okay. I like that. And you may not agree with this, but I think you're on to something there. In fact, I think we agree that, I like your question, are you really ready for secure love yet? Because I do think that there are some similarities in the anxious seeker and the avoidant person. And I think, and people may not agree with this, but I also think that overachieving high achievers, or those high achievements, can be the anxious person's method of avoidance.
Absolutely. I don't even understand why you are saying that. I wouldn't agree with you. I mean, it's like yin and yang, every anxious has a little bit of that.
You avoid. And the part of quelling your anxiety is being hyper focused on things that make you feel accomplished or worthy. And so you throw yourself into that to try to achieve worth. That's just my take on it anyway, in terms of working with women. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
Well, absolutely. First of all, we are not monolith, this is an anxious love seeker or anxious.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Secondly, there are so many ways in which we express this anxiety. Sometimes it's avoidance, sometimes, but we kind of, in science, in our field, we like to categorize and explain,
Mm-hmm.
but that never kind of shows 100% picture.
Absolutely.
So that's why we are therapists. That's why we sit with a person, who are you, to feel you. That's why your mom holds you in her arms and says, what do you need from me right now? So we are beautiful, diverse humans who have so many aspects, and ultimately these are various skills that we developed.
Absolutely.
We call them these, maybe pathologizing occasionally, but they are wonderful skills that we developed to manage the environment where we grew up, to manage survival.
Yes, they can be, but it can also be a method of avoidance. And this isn't, thank you for sharing that. I don't want to implicate that it applies to all people. I'm certainly not saying that, but the ones who struggle, I do find that people who struggle with love, it's much easier oftentimes to work on getting another achievement, starting another business, or doing some other accolade than it is to be in a relationship.
Absolutely.
So now that we've talked, you've explained the anxious person so eloquently, and you did mention that there were several types of avoidance. Can you give us a general, I don't know, like an outline of what an avoidant might look like? Like if I'm listening to this and I don't know, but I kind of might think, what does an avoidant person look like?
Well, avoidant person, you're gonna sense it. You're gonna, if you're an anxious love seeker, and if you're in tune with yourself, first of all, you're gonna get that avoidance, literally. You're gonna feel, I'm talking about dating here, so that's kind of easy for me. You're not gonna get that, he's not gonna be pursuing you as much as you would like him to. And so on a dating, they may at the beginning start pursuing you because there is no danger, emotional danger yet. They're not, they're enjoying that. And this is not, they're not necessarily playing game. I don't kind of put it like that. But as soon as they start attaching to you, they freak out. And and that's why I suggest to women to have to be like, kind of, to slow down the attachment process for for herself, as well for the fellow she's dating, so that they can both feel safer emotionally. It's kind of like she needs to hold, when you have a horse chariot, what do you call it? The
horse
reins.
And carriage. Yeah, the reins. Yeah.
Yes. So she has to be kind of slowing it down. And this is not, I don't say this is playing games. I don't want you to do that. I don't recommend that.
Sure.
But just to kind of keep her heart, make sure that she's discerning, and that he can make it, with himself, if this is right for him. And while doing that, I recommend open, conscious communication about boundaries, about expectations. And this is one problem that anxious love seekers have. They struggle with expressing their needs because they are ashamed of them. They are ashamed to say, oh, I want marriage and love forever. Oh, I kind of want this and that. And then when they're in a relationship with somebody, well, I kind of didn't want that. The guy is saying, like, I never said I wanted. I said at the beginning. Men usually tell us, and we're like, oh, but I was hopeful that something will happen, And so when you start communicating openly, you actually share with this avoidant person that you are, you know how to take care of yourself. And this is one of the biggest pain points of avoidant people. They are afraid that they're going to have to deal with your emotions. That's overwhelming, maybe when they were young, they had to deal with somebody, with too many responsibilities, with with the mother who is maybe anxious, or father. So there was too much emotional burden on these people, so that they're avoidant. And although they're attracted to it, they have this what I call it, almost, that's a good narcissism. There's people use that word, and I hate using it sometimes. But there's this like, oh, I'm gonna help this person. We therapists are like, Mother Teresa kind of syndrome. So I'm gonna kind of take care of her, but then that's also burden. But when they can see that we have our boundaries, that we take care of ourselves, that we stand up for ourselves, that's when they can emotionally relax into more security for both parties' sake. So, and of course, there are people who are not mature yet for that level, who are just dating and not there to interested in relationships yet. And it's like just kind of meeting, you can meet somebody, oh my God, I like them. We are perfect for each other. We had this wonderful 2 months, of summer, but then like, he's just not that interested anymore. Like, because he's like, oh, I cannot go deeper. And you have to realize that, you need to meet people when they're ready for it, and you have to say goodbye and appreciate what you had,
and move on.
They're not at the same level of readiness as you are.
Yes. Thank you for pointing that out, because, and I think that's especially important, because going back to what you were saying before, the anxious person, they're in the relationship with this avoidant person. The avoidant person starts to change up or pull away, and that then triggers the anxious person to spiral, right? And call your girlfriends and pick this thing apart, try to play detective and pick yourself apart, right? And down these rabbit holes we go. But it's really more or less, this avoidant person is, they come to the relationship, and it doesn't mean that they're not interested in dating, or that they're not interested in you, or that they don't want love. It's just emotionally, they're very fearful right from the beginning, but that's not easily seen, and they may not even know it, but it gets triggered. The closer that they get to you, the closer they get to understanding that you have needs, and they just sort of freak out at some point.
Absolutely.
And so you mentioned taking things slow and being slow with your communication and your boundaries and things like that. And I'm wondering if you can even break down taking things slow a little more, because there are people, I'm sure, that are listening to this show that are like, hey, I did everything Dalila is saying, that I communicated my needs, and I thought me and this person were on the same page. We were talking about things. We were, I might have even been seeing other people, or, they might have even been doing that. And then, the rug just got pulled out from under me. So what does she mean by taking things slow?
Yeah, there's a lot of that, right? When you're dating, what I recommend specifically for everybody pretty much, but specifically for anxious love seekers, because attachment is triggering to us, and attachment is easy thing for us to occur. So to slow down our attachment and be very aware of that, to remind ourselves, oh my God, it's great, it's wonderful, and that still doesn't mean that he's my man, And what I recommend at the beginning of dating process, I have these 5 stages of dating. I hope I'll remember if you ask me, but like the first one is, you're basically kind of, if you're online and you're just kind of flirting with everybody. And when I say flirting, I don't mean like you're kind of making them think that you want to have something with them. It's just kind of being nice and being kind of on that
having fun.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, easygoing kind of mode. And next, then you kind of, it's almost like a funnel, funnel, like you pour liquid.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and then you go into this kind of friendship base. So you kind of see who has this similar values, and you enjoy the same things, kind of, and you talk more with several of those people, whether it's in person, whether it's online, and then you get to date some of them in person, and so date several, that means you are getting to know them, that you're not in relationship yet. You need to kind of slow down, and that's one of the hardest things for anxious love seeker, to slow down and to distinguish. So many people don't realize that relationship and dating isn't the same thing.
Yep.
And at this stage, the guys will want to seal the deal. They're going to want to have this exclusivity. And this is what I recommend, taking it a little bit, you will definitely have the favorite that you so badly want to fall into his arms and drive into the sunset with. But you need to kind of have proof for your heart. You need, your inner children need to know that this is safe person, that he's gonna appreciate and value you and your heart and what you have to offer, that your love, your kind of love, is something that he will cherish and relish and enjoy, the other way around. Is he right for you? Do you appreciate his profession? That's a very big one, for men. They like to feel that they're appreciated. Do you think, oh, he's nice and I want him, but there is this thing about him, like I want to change him. None of that will make you happy in a relationship in the future. So you kind of need to take this time to discern, and then you start this relationship with somebody, exclusive relationship, in which you further can see how you two manage, difficult moments, when arguments. How does he respond to your crazy? We all have our craziest self, right? How do things work when you two sit? I always say this is a great kind of test, like you two drive across the country or state or whatever in a car, and there is no Disneyland or wonderful, like just like in this bachelor's show, there is no these exceptional experiences. It's just kind of ordinary. How do you enjoy your time with this person, or is it tense? Is it, does he make you feel secure? Do you can you express your needs and feelings without fear that you're going to be rejected? Now be careful. You have to kind of know what comes from your old limiting beliefs, what comes from him. You're gonna, this will be mixed. So this is where you need to kind of work on recognizing your old patterns and process those emotions.
Absolutely. And I agree. And oftentimes speak about women have funneling access, or people funneling persons access to them in terms of dating before you sort of ramp it up and say that we're in an exclusive relationship. And I think from what I hear you saying, what anxious people, what they struggle with, anxiously attached people, is that they will create a story in their mind that when we're dating, right? If we're dating, they will create a story in their mind that this is my person. They've sort of imagined the wedding and their life together, and they kind of get swept away in their mind just because they've heard a few keywords, or a person, they've had a nice experience. And so they start to get hyper focused very quickly in terms of thinking that this person is the one, when there isn't necessarily proof of that person being the one, or necessarily a label attached to it, like you two haven't had a mutual agreement, conversation, and understanding that this is your person in
Yeah,
dating.
absolutely.
In dating, because I
Yeah.
want to do clarify that, because you can have an avoidant person that's married and all this other kind of stuff, and that's going to look different. But in dating, yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So many of us kind of have this, as you just perfect, way of saying story in our heads. And especially if you're high achieving woman, this is what's going to be the case. You kind of want to seal that deal. You want to reach that goal. And very often there is another issue that many young women make mistake the way that they choose a partner. They kind of have these like, okay, he checks off these boxes. That's because we didn't get to know ourselves. And then like you wind up in a relationship. He's tall, handsome, and you are, lovely looking and also cute, and your parents are just wonderful, and there is this great place where you have wedding, and everybody is just like, wow, envious of everything about your, and you have two wonderful children, and then like in few years, holy guacamole, what's happening here? This person is not what I hoped for. And it's not that something is wrong necessarily with this person. It's just like you two don't have this connection.
Yes.
Because you instead of discerning, you were trying to make it work.
And I can imagine there are some people that are listening to you, and they're going to say, but Dalila, I'm all in already, and I really care for this person. Is there a way that I, as an anxious person, can make it work with someone who is a love avoidant person?
And you are already in a relationship. Absolutely. I mean,
or not already in a relationship, but maybe they're dating, but they like that person. They were just sort of miffed by the avoidance. But as you know, I do think that there are different types of avoidance. So there are avoidants who will get too close or feel like they're getting too close, and then they'll avoid for a little bit of time and come back. Then there's the kind that will avoid, get too close, and disappear permanently. So what if you are dating an avoidant person that disappears periodically and comes back, and they, you have an anxious person, anxiously attached person that wants to try to make it work with an avoidant?
Yeah. That there are so many, right, there are so many backgrounds and where people come from, and first of all, you need to also recognize there's love, what do we call it, love languages, and the way that they love you may not be the same way in which you hope that they would love you, and in which way you love them. But there is also that boundary, what's okay for you. Is it okay that this person disappear? For me, that's absolutely unacceptable. I can love you, this is what I teach my audience and clients. I can love you, but I can also leave you, because I love myself just a little bit more. I'm very proud person, my love matters and what I offer. So like with my husband, I sensed that a little bit. There was like just a tiny little bit of that, not so much, even though he didn't disappear. But I said, are you one of those guys that this is exactly an audience can actually use this and ask and say, hey, are you one of these guys who kind of goes after somebody, and as soon as I start growing liking you,
Yeah.
you start withdrawing. If that's dance that you want to play, I'm out. I've done that, been there, done that. If you're not in, you're not in. That's okay. But I'm not doing that anymore. So that's my boundary. Now, if you're okay with having that, perhaps you're a little bit avoidant too. I don't know how your relationship will go, because usually two avoidants may not work well.
Absolutely not.
Right? If you're okay with that back and forth, who am I to tell you what you should do? But you can make it work with a conscious communication. I call it communication that comes from self-love, instead of resentment, because we anxious love seekers, I know that very well, will have resentment and anger when people leave us, when they don't appreciate us. We feel like that. They don't appreciate us. So you need to learn how to kind of connect with your emotions and how to express those emotions in the ways that this person will receive them well, because we don't know that very often. So I call it from self-love. And then when he sees that you love yourself and that you are, that you respect him as well, then he will feel safer and feel like, oh, okay, I don't need to kind of hold her and myself. That's their limiting belief. They have limiting belief that they need to take care of us. But no, you don't. I take care of myself.
And so it sounds like, from what I'm hearing you say, when you have a person that has anxious attachment that definitely wants to make it work with someone who has an avoidant attachment, the anxious person needs to make sure that their needs are being met, right? And as opposed to doing what you've been doing out of desperation, which is overcompensating, filling in the gaps, doing the chasing, doing pretty much all the work to try to make it work. And so you have to allow the avoidant person, despite their avoidance, they have to be able to meet your needs in some capacity.
Yeah, you put it so well, much more concise way than I did.
Yeah, I think the way you explained it is great, because I think the biggest part too is maybe quelling the anxiety. Like if you're with someone and your anxiety is always like on 10, or is frequently on 10, meaning that you're always like worried about where this relationship is going and why this person can't meet a need, that's probably a red flag too, right?
That is a red flag, and this is a place of big need to look within, because your anxiety comes from that little girl that was not seen, that was not feeling loved. Even though our parents love us, somehow we felt, they didn't love us at some point, or whatever happened. And from this place, you need to kind of acknowledge that, and then say, kind of be almost like, imagine you're advocating for your child. I know that every mother, when she goes to school to advocate for her child, she's not ashamed. She's like going and making sure that her child gets her needs met. So in the same way, you can advocate for your young parts, and say, this is not what, don't speak like, you're not going to speak like, oh, I'm advocating for my young parts, but this is not working for me, what's up, and when you kind of put it out there, your anxiety will go down, because your young parts will feel, oh, okay, she's taking care of me, she's making sure that my needs are met, and then your anxiety will lower. And the guy that you're with, because your anxiety and his anxiety, you are feeding each other like crazy. And then he's like, oh, okay, so she's cool. Oh, so she doesn't need me to kind of make sure that she's okay. Oh, okay, I can relax a little bit. oh, I
Mm.
don't need to like walk on eggshells because he's fed and I'm gonna run from here. I don't know what's gonna happen.
So in essence, you're saying to validate yourself,
Yeah.
making sure that your own needs and not look for it externally from someone
Yeah.
else, making sure that you're in check and that your need for love is not coming from a place of desperation
Yeah.
or
That
fear.
you
Fear, I guess, fear-based
right.
love.
Yeah. And you are you know that there is a person out there who will appreciate you. You know it doesn't need to be this person.
Mhm.
But when you kind of manage these emotions and when your fear and anxiety subside, then you can kind of go with that mindset. And when you go with that mindset, it's less stress for you and your partner. So
Mm.
when hey, I'm going to be okay, even if you don't love me. And that's the kind of healing that needs to happen.
Can you talk about what that process may look like? Like, what are some steps that an anxiously attached person can take to start to heal um, those fear-based anxieties around not feeling good enough or not being lovable or, worried that they're not going to find the ideal partner for them?
Yeah. If I can, that's like, yeah, let me write a book.
Or just like, maybe one or two things that maybe like are I don't know, they're like simple or places to start, I guess you
Yeah,
could say.
totally. I get it. Like, so this will be very useful when you kind of get to that place and when you want to call your friends and ponder this till midnight.
That's a good
And
one.
yeah, and they're gonna like tell you, what's up. They're gonna kind of try to make you feel, oh, he likes you, but they're gonna want to make you feel good. But that's so not helpful, usually. It's good to be kind of tended and loved, but the best thing that you can do for yourself, and I'm not against talking to your friends, just to understand, but is go and see, what am I feeling right now? What am I feeling about myself? Why am
Hmm.
I feeling like this? And instead of saying stupid me, I'm again saying I'm worthless. There will be some ugly speech there that
Hmm.
that you repeat, like, oh, I'm worthless, who will love me? I realized that after I got divorced in my 40s, my mom said, who's like, she was so freaked out, like I could see that that's her fear, and that I
Mm.
don't have to have, like, I said, Mom, why wouldn't somebody want me?
Mm.
Right? So we have generational trauma.
Hmm.
So we need to see, where does this story come from? Is it our mom? Is it our grandma? Is it our parents trying to keep us chaste so that they don't have to worry about unwanted pregnancies and like, oh, you need to wait for love and you need to hope that somebody will choose you, there's it's millennia of patriarchal like control over women's sexuality
Mm.
and our ability to choose. We feel we don't have choice, but actually we can go after what we want. I'm not saying you need to chase people, but you can say, hey, you're cute, throw a handkerchief, there's that handkerchief.
Hmm.
So, okay, sorry, I derailed a little bit conversation. So go, instead of beating yourself up, sorry,
It's okay. It's all good.
instead of beating yourself up and saying, oh, stupid me, I'm again thinking like this, go in and say, what is it what made me think like that? Why would I think like that? Everybody tells me that I'm nice, good
Mhm.
enough, pretty, like my employers like me. You will find places that somebody likes you. You can
Mhm.
kind of nurture this conversation with yourself, and then so utilize that uh, like compassion, be compassionate towards those
Self-compassion.
younger parts,
Mm-hmm.
and see what, like, how old do I feel? You can feel, like, how old do I feel when I uh, think like this about
Ooh,
myself?
I
Like,
like that one.
yeah, like, how do I feel? So you will maybe go to some old, events that may bring something up. If you don't want to go deep, I
Mm,
recommend doing this with a therapist, but you can also kind of go and find, my dog loves me, my grandma loves me, my mom loves me, that former boyfriend loved me, my friends are great. So you can kind of nurture yourself. What would you tell to a child
yeah.
who comes with this story to you? You would like want to beat up people that are telling her that story, and you're telling yourself this story.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And I know, Dalila, it's hard to believe, but we're at the end.
Oh my God, that is actually the shortest hour today in my life.
Right?
Yeah.
So for people who want to find you, because they're so, they love what you're saying and they love what you're talking about and it truly resonates with them. Tell us how we can find you. And if there's anything that any sort of projects or things that you're working on that we can support you on.
Well, I'm currently working on my program, my group coaching program.
Nice.
The idea is to go from from anxious love seeker to secure love creator. The idea is that you realize that you're that love creator. You give love, and you are looking for people who appreciate your love and want to give love back.
Sure.
So, and then you develop this empowerment rather than, oh, will somebody choose me? Will I ever find love? You can feel empowered to actually create that part, that part of your life, just like you did in your profession, in your education, and everything else. So if you want to be part of that, like, I still haven't finished my, any of landing pages, but they can follow me on Instagram, Independent Women Rule, independent, and they can also join my group on Facebook, Secure Love Creators, I believe. Gosh, I mixed up everything, my handles. But follow me on Instagram. I will definitely hang out there.
And I will definitely post the links to find you on Instagram. And
Yeah.
whenever you're done with your program, we can definitely post the links here in the show notes as well, so people can find you, because I think your content is great. And I'm sure that it resonates with a lot of people out there looking for love. So I appreciate you for coming on. And I think this has been such an informative show, and I really loved having you on.
Oh, I enjoyed as well. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, so would love to know what your thoughts are on this episode of the podcast. Are you an anxious attacher? Are you an avoidant attachment style? Have you been in a relationship and where the dynamics that Dalila and I spoke of are very similar? Has that happened to you? How did you feel, when you experienced this? Let's talk about it. So be sure to follow me on social media and drop a comment below. If you're watching this video on YouTube, drop a comment below. Love to know what your experiences have been. Let's talk soon, guys. Thank you so much for being with me and sharing another episode with me.